Part of me would like to resolve things with him, but it's just too difficult, so I haven't.
Were there ever times that you did express your anger?
No.
Because what I think you're doing there is it's like a kettle that's kind of building up and you're letting the top off it. But I think there's probably a lot of other stuff that's not really been dealt with and really been processed.
Part of me thinks people blow their tops unnecessarily. That's because that's not the way I am.
Do you believe that anger ever has a place? Welcome to today's episode of In Therapy with me, Alex Howard. You've probably noticed we're not in the studio. We did manage to film the intros and the outros for the first 4 episodes before the office was shut down for COVID-19. So I'm filming in here, but the good news is we filmed for several months with the participants before the lockdown came in. So we've got quite a bit of footage that Oliver's working through. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to continue to release episodes, 1 episode a week for the coming few months. I'm going to continue filming Zoom sessions with the participants, so we'll be able to also keep tracking and following their journeys. For today's episode, we have the second episode with Sally. So you may remember in last week's episode, we followed Sally's journey with her behind-the-scenes diaries attending the 90-day program. In this week's episode, I have my first in-person session with Sally, and we'll follow the first half of that where we're exploring the theme of anger. We all have anger, but we all have different relationships with our anger. And our relationship with our anger has an enormous impact on almost everything else in our lives. So that's what we're exploring in the first half of this session. And the second half will be released next week. But here is Sally.
Hi.
Hello.
Right.
How you doing?
Come in, yeah, I'm good, thanks. You alright?
Yeah, not too bad. Hello. Oh.
Phoebe.
Hello.
Phoebe.
Oh, right.
It's a little star, aren't you? Find the least offensive mug.
You're not quite sure yet, are you?
No, I don't know what that is. She's like, oh, I don't like it. Oh, you're so cute. My name's Sally, I'm 36 and I've had Emmy for about a year now, about 12 months. My life isn't anywhere near what it was before. I'm not able to work full-time hours, which I hate because I love my job and I want to be at work all the time. I'm really, really lucky that the owners of the practice where I work have bought me a laptop so I can do like half the day at home and half at the practice. So a lot of my work is very admin based, so they've been really, really supportive in doing that. So needy dog. I have reduced my hours though because I was doing half a day at work, so 4 hours at work and then 4 hours at home, and it was just too much. I was just not resting at all. So now what I do is 4 hours at the practice and then 2 hours at home. So that's made a big difference. I can cope with the hours like that better. But because I need to work, because I've got a mortgage to pay and things, I'm using all of my energy for that. So I don't socialise anymore. I haven't seen my friends in months, and they've been really understanding. But yeah, I'm just not doing what I used to. I used to walk my dog twice a day. I'm only walking her once. It does impact me quite a lot in loads of different ways, really. But the worst is being a bit cut off from everything, not having that connection with a lot of the outside world. I pretty much go to work and then come home and that's it. So yeah, you become a bit of a recluse when you've got ME. And this sort of, what I've found more recently is that this illness is making me really paranoid.
Really?
Yeah, and really my confidence is nowhere near what it used to be, so I'm not very confident. I'm confident in my abilities, but yeah, it's taken a bit of me away, if you know what I mean.
I'm Jenny, I'm Sally's boss, and I've worked with Sally for 4 years as she's been the practice manager here at the vets. Sally came in as really a breath of fresh air when she came to the clinic, so she was full of energy, vibrant, and she's really what I needed. I needed someone that can just take grip of all the people side of it. She's great with people.
Can I pretend I'm telling you off? Yeah.
So I've seen a massive change in Sally since she's been ill with chronic fatigue. So it's been over a year now, and initially we just thought she was run down, tired, stressed. I was really concerned for her health, and then since she's had the diagnosis, I guess it's been a bit of a relief for all of us because we knew what was wrong. But for me, it's had a massive impact on Sally's ability and performance at work. So she can't work full days anymore, so she can only manage a maximum of about 4 hours in the clinic at once, whereas before she was doing 8 to 10 hour days. She does want to get back to work, but we're trying to do it, we both realise it's got to be at a pace, we can't rush it back. I think she's quite keen, she's a bit like me, she's an achiever, she wants to do things, and I have to keep telling her, no, you have to take your time with it.
Thank you very much for making the effort to come down. It must seem a bit odd being here because 2 weeks ago you were here doing the 90-day program.
Yeah.
And I've got a little bit of sense because I've seen a few of your videos. It's quite nice for me to feel like I'm watching someone's videos for once. So it sounds like over the last 12 months, you've sort of got yourself on a good track. And it sounds like with the 90-day program, you've got an extra kind of boost in terms of tools and
Yes.
focus. And there's something about kind of investing the kind of the money, the time and the kind of energy and going, okay, now I'm going to kind of, I really want to commit to kind of what it is that I'm putting into action.
Yeah.
Where are the challenges right now? So where does it feel like either you're just struggling, like things that feel like they're either not clear or they're tricky or they're not working, or where do you see the challenges sort of coming in, you're on a kind of good track that could throw you off that track?
I think I need to do some work on emotions because I've always been one of those that I ignore them completely. Like if something upsetting happens, or I don't know, I sort of say to people, do you ever have a car cry or shower cry at work? And some of them say yes, and that makes me feel good because I'm not weird.
So I'm going to take the inference here that you have car cries and shower cries.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so sometimes if I'm feeling sad or sad things are happening, I won't address that when it happens. It's like I've been conditioned, and I don't know whether it's because of the job. I've been a manager for a long time, so you can't be the person when something happens that you're bursting into tears and flapping if something and panics. I sort of liken it to being a swan. Like you've got to look like you're really calm on the outside, but you're like inside you're going like this completely. So I don't know whether because I've done that for such a long time, if something happens, I park it and then I'll have a car cry later on. I'll listen to some sad music and then have a car cry or shower cry. So it comes out, but I can literally feel it in my chest coming up and then it stops.
Yeah.
So I definitely need to work
So I
on that.
really hear that strategy is appropriate in certain contexts. So I agree that if you're in a role of kind of managing a situation, part of that role is responding to what's happening on the outside, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to bottle what's happening on the inside. And I think what happens is if we've got a lot of backlog of feelings and emotions that have not been felt, then things tend to become more overwhelming and more intense. And if we have sort of processed and digested quite a lot of our own historical emotions, we tend to just be much less triggered. So we're in a situation, for example, at work and something's kicking off, and we're just sort of much more steady in ourselves, and we might feel a little bit irritated or fed up, but it tends not to. Most of the time when emotions rise intensely in tricky situations, it's often not about that situation. Okay. It's about all the other things that we haven't felt in the past that are sort of similar to that situation. So the example being someone's driving around a roundabout and someone kind of cuts in front of them and they kind of go into a murderous rage. And it's like, well, one could say, well, yeah, the other person's not driving very well. And it's like, they're not driving well. So why that massive kind of reaction? And normally it's going to be something like they feel that person has taken up their space, for example, and they've got a whole history of people taking up their space and all the frustration and the anger and the rage and all the stuff that goes with that. Or it's, someone's cut in and they've not been seen. And they've got a whole history of people not seeing them. Okay. So normally when we have a strong reaction to what's happening in the world, often it's not so much about that situation, it's about all the other situations in the past that we've not felt our emotions. So it's sort of like we walk around with this big black sack of emotions that haven't really been dealt with, and we're kind of weighed down by that. And particularly if there's an achiever pattern, it's like, I've got all this stuff around not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy, not feeling valuable. So I've got to really drive myself and push myself in my life to sort of compensate for that. Okay. The more that we work through, the more that we process those feelings and emotions, the less of that stuff then is getting triggered. So I think it's great that you have car cries and shower cries because as the alternative of just not feeling that stuff. But my sense is that the car cries and the shower cries are probably not enough. Okay. Because what I think you're doing there is it's like a kettle that's kind of building up and you're letting the top off it. But I think there's probably a lot of other stuff that's not really being dealt with and really being processed.
Makes sense.
Yeah. How does it feel thinking about it in that way?
It makes loads of sense because I've done it for a long time. So I've got a big black bag. Yeah. Definitely. And what's really frustrating is when I'm angry, I cry, and it's like I'm not able to deal with it properly. It's really weird.
What's been, and I'm asking this question slightly knowing a little bit of the answer from your case history, but what's been your history with anger?
It wasn't ever around when I was a child. Like my parents aren't together anymore. When my mum would say the wrong thing or not put the shopping away properly or something like that, my dad wouldn't say anything about it, even though it sounds ridiculous, but he wouldn't say anything about it. He would just go silent for a week. He wouldn't talk to us. Yeah. So that's the history there.
How did you feel when he did that?
Awful. It was so awkward, and I felt bad for my mum, and we just weren't a normal family like that. Yeah.
How did you feel towards your dad?
How did I feel?
Yeah, at the time.
Angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, really angry. But I couldn't say anything
couldn't
because
help
it'd make
the
it worse.
Yeah. Were there ever times that you did express your anger?
I don't think so. No. And I haven't spoken to my dad since I was 18, and I'm 36, 37 nearly.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Part of me would like to resolve things with him, but it's just too difficult. So I haven't. Ostrich syndrome. Head in the sand.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Are there people in your family that are in contact with him?
Yeah, my brother is. Yeah.
They have a good relationship, or?
Well, kind of. my brother lives in Spain with my mum and stepdad, and my dad lives in where we grew up still. So they just talk on the phone every couple of weeks or something. But it's not an amazing relationship. He's a very strange man, my dad. Really weird.
When you feel, do you feel anger in your day-to-day life these days? Like if you have a really shitty day at work and like, let's say for example, hypothetical situation, I'm sure it never happens, but you feel that situations happen, let's say with a customer, and they're being totally unreasonable and they're throwing all their kind of stuff, they're acting out their stuff on you. And there must be a part of you that's just like wants to blow your top back at them. I'm sure that never happens.
Doesn't happen. Very professional.
But in the hypothetical scenario that did happen, would you ever get home and just blow your top or be angry or like?
I don't think so. I think I would, well, sometimes I would talk to my husband about it, but sometimes I just think, oh, what's the point?
But you talk to your husband about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't rant.
Very kind of,
yeah. I'd tell him what happened and I'd be annoyed, but I wouldn't blow my top.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so you would go, and if you went anywhere, you'd go to sadness, not anger.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether I feel sad when I'm angry. Well, I just cry when I'm angry, yeah.
Do you know is there an emotion or is it literally just a kind of release of sadness?
I think it's just a release of the anger, but it's coming out as tears rather than me fuming at people.
Yeah.
It's really irritating, especially as a female manager. When I used to work with a lot of men, like, it's so frustrating when you're angry and you cry because then you see people look at you like, oh, she's a girl crying, you know, it's emotional.
And actually what you want to do is rip their head off.
Punch them, yeah. Yeah, so it's really frustrating that I can't, because we didn't talk about things as a family. Me and my mum do now. Like it was definitely my dad.
I'm hearing that. Yeah.
It's like I'm not able to communicate effectively when I'm annoyed.
What do you believe about anger or people that express anger?
I think part of me thinks there's no need for it a lot of the time. I feel like people blow their tops unnecessarily. That's because that's not the way I am. And that's not the way I've ever been. So I think when people, especially doing the sort of job I do, I think it's really unprofessional as well. Because obviously work's a big part of your identity, but yeah, I feel like, we shouldn't do that. It's not professional. I find it's unnecessary actually.
Do you believe that anger ever has a place?
Yes, but very rarely, I think.
And what would that place be?
I don't know because I think that being angry towards somebody often isn't fair. Like if a client comes in and they're shouting at one of the receptionists, I think that's not fair because it's not the receptionist's fault. Although their anger is legitimate and fair, you know, if it's their pet that's poorly and they think we've done something wrong, I get why they feel like that. But I think when they're shouting at somebody it's not their fault, I don't think it's right. I think it's a bit mean.
Yeah. Do you know anyone that you feel has a healthy relationship with anger?
Probably my mum now, actually. Yeah.
What does that look like?
She, from being with my dad for 27 years and not being able to say how she felt about things or be angry.
She places a high value on her emotions now. Good for her.
Completely.
Yeah.
She's very reserved with it, actually, with her emotions. She'll have a think about it and then she'll sort of talk to my stepdad. But I remember when they first got together, they had blazing rows. There was plates being thrown and all sorts. And I was like, wow. It was a bit scary, actually, because I was never used to that.
That was sort of her emotional pendulum, I imagine, that had been withheld for so long that suddenly it swung and it had to swing to find a point of balance.
Yeah, but no, she does deal with it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not there to see that.
Yeah.
She's in Spain.
Yeah, I hear that. I want to draw a really important distinction between feeling emotions and acting out emotions. So feeling an emotion, like feeling anger, is having that feeling of anger in the body, like feeling the strength of it, feeling the power of it, feeling the kind of, sometimes a sense of kind of rage, but you can fully have that feeling. That feeling is a really energizing feeling. It's a powerful feeling. We can absolutely feel an emotion without vomiting the emotion over other people. So vomiting anger would be shouting, screaming, smashing plates, at the real extreme, being violent or whatever. And I'm not condoning that, and I'm not recommending that. That normally just creates more of a mess in one's life that one's then got to mop up and deal with. But we don't seem to make much of a distinction in society between having the feeling of something and acting out something. And it takes a lot of energy to hold down an emotion. So if you've got a history as a childhood of not being allowed to have your feelings, not necessarily feeling safe around feelings, being sort of taught that if you say the wrong thing, then dad's going to kind of almost like freeze the whole family emotion for a week, and like that's quite a scary thing as a child to be around. Then what you end up learning is, I just can't have that feeling. And if you can't have the feeling, where does it go? So that feeling ends up, all of that energy ends up being trapped and tied in your body. And it takes energy to hold that down. So then when you have a kind of car cry or a shower cry, you're sort of letting the top off that feeling, but you're still having to hold on to that. And my observation is when people are shutting down anger, they're also shutting down personal power. So the ability, for example, at work, that let's say you got to call that client because something's gone wrong, and maybe someone has screwed something up at work, and it's like they've got a legitimate case to be pissed off. But if you're not in touch with your own strength and your own capacity, then you kind of feel kind of small and scared, and then that's why there's lots of anxiety and kind of concern and worry and what if this, and it's almost like the reality check when you do it is normally it's kind of okay. But the build-up is because you're not in touch with that sense of strength and capacity. Okay. When we shut down our anger, we shut down our personal power. When we shut down our anger, we shut down our energy. And so I think part of the jigsaw for you, all the things you're already doing, listening to your body, calming your system, using EFT, meditation, all that stuff still stands. So this is not a kind of do this, ignore all of that. All of those pieces are important. But part of the picture, I think, for you is really looking at your relationship with your emotions. But I think the emotion particularly is your relationship with anger. Okay. I want you to tell me all the reasons why you shouldn't be angry.
I might say things I don't mean, and I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah, you don't want to be a dad. You learned that your feelings weren't really safe and it wasn't really okay to have them. Can you see how exhausting and how draining, how tiring that becomes?
Yeah, it's like if just unpicked it all, makes loads of sense.
You're so determined to not be like your dad that in a strange way you end up being a sort of kind of mirror of it. The more we feel our feelings, the more steady the waters become in day-to-day life. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, please do like the video. Please do also comment underneath if you've got questions, reflections. How did this impact you? How did it perhaps inspire you? And also please do subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. Also, you can click the notification bell. That means that as we release new episodes, YouTube will let you know, but also it helps more people see these videos. It tells the YouTube algorithm that this is content worth watching and worth sharing. So there'll be another live episode of Everyday Alex tomorrow. And then for next week's In Therapy, we will be following the second half of Sally's first session. And we'll go deeper into her relationship with her anger. And I'll also start to introduce some ways to understand that and work with that you can follow at home. So I look forward to talking with you then.